Hello, everyone. Welcome in here to ST1 College Football and our Friday night weekend preview show. My name is Mark Rogers. I'm the voice of college football. Please check out the banner below. Check out my YouTube channel as well, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We produce, much like ST1 College Football right here, daily content, live streams, call-in shows, and so forth and so on to get you set for all the big games every week in college football. I will be scanning the live chat to respond to your comments, your questions, your debate topics, anything you'd like to discuss in the world of college football, of course, is on the table. I will take it all on. I am hyped and excited for tomorrow's play with the Pac-12 back in play, headlined by USC and Arizona State, and we'll get to the timing of that game in just a second. But again, join in the live chat. Leave your comments, your questions, your debate topics right there. And, of course, lock it in here at ST1 College Football for daily content posted all the time, ready for your response. And I appreciate you checking out my channel as well, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. All right, let's check out the Week 10 schedule. I think it's got to be the best schedule that we've had for a week of college football, with, of course, us surviving on the group of 5 games in the FCS early in the season, and then the ACC and the Big 12 got to play. They're the second or third week of September. The SEC joined in on the 26th, and things got better and better and better. And the Big 10 will now be on the field for the third consecutive week, which is great. And now the Pac-12. And, of course, MACtion, the Mid-American Conference, with a huge Wednesday night, as everybody played on Wednesday night. And I think that was a good choice, good decision by the MAC commissioner and everybody else involved there with the MAC. They're trying to gain their footing and have opted in recent years for a number of alternative ways to get attention on the college football landscape. And that has been with the proliferation of Tuesday and Wednesday games. So why not for the big weekend opener in the middle of the season for college football? Why not go with a full schedule on Wednesday night as they did in the MAC this past Wednesday? Again, I'll be scanning the live chat to respond to your questions, your comments, and your debate topics about anything. The game's coming up first tonight with Miami at 5-1 taking on NC State. And, of course, the Canes, despite the loss to Clemson in blowout fashion a couple of weeks ago, still have their sights on a college football playoff appearance. First, of course, an ACC championship game rematch with Clemson, and much will be decided possibly on Saturday in South Bend, depending on the outcome of the game. It could just set up a rematch with Notre Dame taking on Clemson, regardless of the winner. All right, let me dive in the live chat real quick if there's any responses that we need to get to. We got Toasty on the line. Good to see you. I am doing just fine this evening. I am doing great. I'm looking forward to a great weekend of college football, what I think to be the best matchups of college football that we've had all weekend. And we'll get right to that first and foremost. So again, lock in on the content right here at SD1 College Football. Check me out at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We have posted previews this week on USC, Arizona State from both sides, Georgia, Florida from a ton of angles. We did a Clemson live stream the other night. So we've got Clemson, Notre Dame locked in. Previewed Ohio State and Rutgers. And Michigan, Indiana. And who else is playing? We've got the Tennessee, Arkansas preview up posted today, as well as Texas A&M and South Carolina. And Texas and West Virginia, with the Longhorns still with hopes of claiming a conference championship as well. What happened last weekend in the Big 12 was not good for the conference in regards to a college football playoff appearance. Not at all, with Oklahoma State going down as the lone undefeated team entering the weekend and outplaying Texas, dominating that game in regards to total yardage and in just about every facet except turnovers and hidden yardage. That Oklahoma State drops to the ranks of the beaten now, and also Kansas State losing. Those two teams were undefeated in conference play, both of them tied for first place going into the weekend, and they still are. along with a one-loss Iowa State team. So Oklahoma State still controls its own destiny, but in regards to the college football playoff chances of the Big 12, they took a severe hit last weekend in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And then, of course, the eyes of the nation concerning the Pac-12 chances go to USC and go to Oregon. Of course, anybody can win all the games. We could see Oregon State win all of its games and march on to the Pac-12 championship and have a college football playoff appearance. But in regards to what's expected, what the projections are, it's all about Oregon and it's about USC. We did a USC live stream that you may want to check out with Conquest Chronicles and with also Pete Gearson, formerly of Fox Sports. Check that out on my channel because we prepped the Arizona State game, talked to USC football for an hour. That was a lot of fun. And if you've missed the game time for the USC Arizona State game, and you're especially on the East Coast, maybe it doesn't cross your mind flipping on a game at noon, because that's what we do on the East Coast and throughout the Midwest as well. But this is how television and by connection, money control college football, control college athletics, and of course, professional athletics, is that Arizona State and USC will have to hit the field kickoff at 9 a.m. local time because it's been the counter programming the last couple of years by Fox Sports to deliver its best game at noon Eastern time and not trying to compete with ABC and ESPN in the primetime window, and instead secure that noon window with the top game of the week. And that's typically been a Big Ten game. You know, you'll see a couple of years ago, Ohio State and Penn State played at noon on Fox. Ohio State, Michigan always play at noon. And the best of the Big Ten has been played at noon as Fox's premier game. There are no good games in the Big Ten. Well, albeit Michigan, Indiana, Fox has moved that to a 4 o'clock kickoff Eastern time, but not really a marquee game. Should be a decent game, Michigan, Indiana. But to counter program that, and I'm sure the Pac-12 jumped in on this because they need all the eyeballs they can get. They need the exposure from the other side of the country. And so Arizona State and USC will kick off at 9 a.m. Eastern time, 9 a.m. local time for that noon Eastern time window. I thought I had my glasses right here so I could see the live chat. I was sorely mistaken. I may jump out to grab those unless I can blow up this screen well enough. We already heard from Toasty, and now we've got Nicholas, good to see you as well. Yes, Toasty, the Pac-12 starts this weekend. We know Nicholas is a Michigan State fan. Toasty, I don't know who you root for. We got Austin Kavanaugh on the line. And I got to say, just as I did the other night, so we're here on SG1 College Football's channel every Sunday and every Friday at 6 o'clock Eastern time. We do have the phone lines open as well. I'll get that number posted in just a second. 860-325-3687. 860-325-3687 if you want to call me and ask questions, and we can talk college football. But so it's interesting for me to join in here and get to meet and talk to a lot of you that I don't normally get to see, and am seeing your handles and seeing your favorite teams and your comments for the first time. So that's cool. Kevin, good to see you. Nicholas, I believe we've engaged with Nicholas here, and now he's tracking us over at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football as well. Kevin letting us know that Brady Quinn, I think he's referring to Brady Quinn because I was talking about the Fox noon game and then the noon leading into the noon game, their big noon kickoff. Yes, that's what they call the show. Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, Brady Quinn. Brady Quinn was a bust in the NFL. He was a great college quarterback, of course. That's what allowed him to be drafted as high as he was in the NFL. I do think that you need to disclaim anybody who gets drafted by certain franchises in the NFL. I don't believe that there's any position on the football field that is affected as much as the quarterback position by the franchise that selects that particular player. So we've seen recent either misses, whether they are miscalculations. I don't think so, because everybody else would have drafted these particular quarterbacks as high as those teams did. So it wasn't like they reached for a quarterback. So I'm going to blame the organization more than the particular player themselves. But recent history, the New York Jets, the Cleveland Browns in particular, have had a horrible time drafting and developing the quarterback position. So Brady Quinn never had the tools to be an elite NFL quarterback. He was never that type of prospect, didn't have that great of an arm, had a good arm, a good enough arm to play in the NFL. But going to that dysfunctional franchise certainly did him no favors. Great college quarterback, not historic, not at that level, not Tim Tebow, Cam Newton level, but a near great college quarterback, Brady Quinn. So certainly not a bust at Notre Dame, and we talk college football here, but if we're talking NFL, yes, he was a bust, but he wasn't a first-round pick. Wasn't Brady Quinn early second, or was he in the third? Something in that range. No. No, okay, I'm mixing up Brady Quinn's draft position with Johnny Manziel's by the Browns there. I was about to. Jimmy Clausen, again, he was not the college quarterback that Brady Quinn was. Certainly his teams weren't anywhere nearly as successful. Kevin thinks that Notre Dame can win only because Trevor is not playing. Obviously, that's a huge miss, and we can talk Clemson and Notre Dame. There are previews here on SG1 College Football's channel, so check those out. And also, we talked it up big time over on my channel, so check us out as well. So my thought is that DJ Uiagalelei, who I've got to pause. It still doesn't roll off the tongue. It does roll off the tongue. It doesn't roll out of the mind. I got to think, okay, how does he pronounce his name again? And then I got to pause and then da-da-da-da-da. So DJ Uiagalelei. So he was given his first start last week, and he was exceptional, considering the circumstances, considering what the standard is there with the best or second best quarterback in the country. I thought he was pretty amazing. I was watching other games and was tracking, of course. So I've got my war room command control central setup of as many games as I can possibly watch because I've got to track all the games to provide the live streams and the instant analysis and so forth. So I was watching a lot of other games. And as I continued to see BC mount a lead that grew to 28-10 in the second quarter, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to have to watch this game in the second half to see what's going on. And I just expected, because of the score and only scoring 10 points close to halftime, they did get a field goal by our guy BT Potter at the end of the first half, like a 52-yarder to make it 28-13. I just figured I'm going to check out Uiagalelei's stats, and they're going to be horrible for them to only have 10 points late in the second quarter. He's going to be 10 for 22 with 3 picks. Hit his first 9. I did check in during the commercial breaks and would see 3 and 4 plays at a time. And this kid can play. He made the right decisions. He delivered the ball on time. He can make all the throws. He was confident. He was poised. 0 picks in 42 attempts. I think BC might have had a shot at 1 or 2. So yes, not having Trevor Lawrence in South Bend is a hit to the team, but it's not nearly the hit that a lot of teams would take in going to the second string quarterback. This kid may be a top 5 quarterback next year in college football. Toasty, good to see you, Ohio State fan. We've got And Toasty, I don't see you over on my channel, but just want to let you know that if you love Ohio State, please check out our channel. I also have an Ohio State channel, so look up the Voice of College Football Ohio State. We post Ohio State content there all the time, every day. So check it out, Voice of College Football Ohio State. All right, Kevin, I'm unfortunately a Texas Tech alumni. So it says expect 2-8. And that sounds very familiar in regards to the record that I projected for the Red Raiders and Matt Wells, who has appeared on our show 3 or 4 times back when he was with Utah State. Matt Wells was the first coach that I had on my channel. So I will forever be appreciative of that. Austin Kavanaugh, does Stanford have a chance? I have got to admit, I have not done a lot of work on Stanford during the offseason. And up until a month ago, I think most of us would have bet that the Pac-12 was not going to play football at all. And if they did, they would have played in the spring. So Stanford obviously has a tough assignment in prime time tomorrow night against Oregon. That will be interesting to check out the Cardinal and to see if they're going to measure up to what is projected to be the best team in the Pac-12. Certainly it was last year, the Rose Bowl champions. David Shaw, after taking over for Jim Harbaugh and maintaining the excellence that was established, and I'm going to be a defender of Jim Harbaugh here for just a second, because he did resurrect Stanford football from the ashes and lift it to a BCS level. They went to 2 consecutive BCS bowl games, Harbaugh's last year before he took off for the 49ers, and then when David Shaw took over. And then Shaw maintained it for about 4 to 5 years, won Pac-12 championships, went to Rose Bowls, finished in the top 5 to 10 in the country. And then after that brilliant Christian McCaffrey 2015 season, they started to level off to 9-3, 8-4, 8-4 in that range. Had a 8-5 year in there after a bowl win against Maryland in the Red Box Bowl. And then they looked awful last year in going 4-8 against a down Pac-12. So David Shaw might be at the crossroads at Stanford. Yes, Kevin, the Browns franchise has been a graveyard for quarterbacks, unlike any other. Think of all the quarterbacks that have gone through there since the franchise was resurrected in 1999. And of course, Ty Detmer was the first quarterback to get a start for the new franchise in 1999 at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the score of that game at 43-0, that should have been a harbinger. We should have seen that as a foreshadowing of what the Browns would be for the next 20, 21 years as a franchise. Tim Couch, of course, the number 1 pick in 1999, correct? 1999, the number 1 selection. And he never had a chance there, and so it started. Whether they be college quarterbacks who they tried to develop, Brady Quinn, Johnny Manziel, Brandon Weeden, or we're talking about veteran quarterbacks who went there to die at the end of their careers, like Jeff Garcia, Trent Dilfer, Jake Delhomme. All right, Austin. Bears made the worst management decision of all time with Trubisky. Well, considering who was drafted after Mitch Trubisky, I haven't seen Trubisky play much this year. Obviously, he got benched in favor of Nick Foles, and I thought he had a game or two that he played pretty well in there. But when Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes get selected, was that the same draft? Of course, Watson was. Was Mahomes the same draft? Yes. The same draft. Then your fate is sealed. Unlike any other position, the quarterbacks and the place at which they're selected in the NFL draft and who else is selected in that draft at the quarterback position is always going to be compared. So Mitch Trubisky could turn out to be, let's say he writes himself and turns out to be a decent quarterback. Let's say he turns out to be Andy Dalton. And I know that that example is going to get a few smirks and chuckles, but Andy Dalton's had a nice career in the NFL. So if Mitch Trubisky turns out to be Andy Dalton, well, that's, first of all, not good enough with the number 2 pick in the draft. And secondly, it's not going to measure up to Deshaun Watson and especially Patrick Mahomes, who were drafted, 15th, 16th, in that range. All right. Want to let everyone know that we've got a Patreon page that contains my predictions, which, to be completely honest with you, have been the worst of my life. The last 2 weeks have been awful, atrocious, so you don't want to join us for that. But you do get my predictions there at Patreon. You get an insider look at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, and all that we do. We are unfolding that week by week in regards to our vision, our plan, my television background in the industry for 30 years and so forth and so on. You also get some betting advice from not me, because you don't want betting advice from me, although I'll give you some hints and some leans and some tips and some things that I've picked up. But we've got Steve Merrill from Pro Sports Info who joins us there with his betting advice and also a lock of the week. But the real cool thing is that we do watch parties, which we've got one tonight with Miami and NC State. We'll do a watch party tonight. And then you also get an exclusive live stream per your request over on Patreon. It's only 15 cents per day, $5 for the month. So join me on Patreon. Just go to Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV, join us there, try it out, give it a shot. Let me know what you think, what you like, what you don't like. Give me your requests. Dalton. I think it's been a while since I've seen Dalton. Hey, Mark, can I quiz you by asking you who won the national championship in 1987? Okay. Dalton, I'm not an encyclopedia, but I've been called one many hundreds of times, thousands maybe. So I do retain a lot of information. I've got a lot of weaknesses in life, a lot of things I can't do, but I retain a lot of information. So you're gonna have to do much better than that. 1987, easy. Miami won the national championship. They beat Nebraska in the Orange Bowl. And the only reason I won't be able to tell you the final score for sure is because they beat Nebraska in the span of a couple of years twice by almost the identical score. One was 22-0, one was 23-3. So it was one of those two. Yes, that's an easy call. Thank you, Dalton, though. When I first started working at ESPN, the guys that I worked with used to play a game where they would have me come in and they would pull up the page of a player, typically not a prominent player, an obscure player, and would cover up the key stats and, of course, the name with sticky notes. And then they would time me and see how long it would take me to guess the player just by looking at their statistics. And they would cover up the team name and not make it obvious. So I retain a lot of information and scores. I can tell you the score of every bowl game pretty much on the map. But the memory's fading. I'm getting older, and the more the seasons rack up, it becomes more and more difficult. But anyway, so I love the quizzes. So Dalton, keep them coming. DJ Big Cinco from Germany. Thanks for dropping by tonight. We appreciate that. We've got a question coming in from, I thought it was fourth down. Has Notre Dame beaten Clemson at home? That is a great question. Notre Dame and Clemson. You're talking about two teams that have rarely played. Of course, they played in the playoff. 2018, that was a neutral site game, of course, 30-3. Then they played at Clemson in Death Valley in 2015. Notre Dame made a comeback down 24-9 with a couple touchdowns in the fourth quarter and failed on a 2-point conversion in the rain, lost 24-22. Other than that, I believed I vaguely, and maybe I'm mixing up Georgia Tech and Clemson. I'm not coming up with another Notre Dame Clemson matchup besides those two. Also, keep in mind, though, that we try not to field questions here that you can just, I consider that a Google question is what that is, because that's exactly what I'm going to do. Because I like to know everything, which, of course, is a impossibility. But I like to know anytime I hear a player's name and I think, I don't know who that is, I go look them up. But there's a site called Winsipedia, and we'll look up the Clemson Notre Dame series right there, because I can only go with those two recent games. But I'm sure that they've played. You know what? Didn't Clemson beat Notre Dame when Dwight Clark was playing? So this would have been about 1978, 79, in that range. I believe they played at that point too. Okay. So Clemson leads the Notre Dame series 3-1. Of course, they had the two wins that we just talked about. Yes, there's my game right there. 1979. 1979. Clemson beat Notre Dame again in the game that I just referenced, featuring Dwight Clark. And it was a game that I've heard Bill Walsh talk about, him discovering Dwight Clark. And then Notre Dame won the first matchup 21-17, close game in 1977. And that's right around the time that Clemson was really building up as a football program under Danny Ford, who took over at the end of the 78 season. And of course, Danny Ford, who won the national championship in 1981 at Clemson, Clemson's first and only up until 2016, took over and coached his first game in the very famous or infamous, depending on your standpoint, the 1978 Gator Bowl. Woody Hayes' last game was Danny Ford's first game, because, of course, Woody took a pop at Charlie Ballman after he intercepted Art Schlichter to end the game. Clemson has never been to Notre Dame. Okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing where these games are played, but those are just the four games between them all time, 3-1. Austin's a Stanford fan. Yeah, so I'm interested to see the Cardinal play tomorrow night against Oregon. I am very interested in that. We've got Indy Kid 3. I got Arizona State over Oregon. Jaden Daniels is a very dark horse Heisman pick. So I can go along with that prediction. This is another place where I've failed, unfortunately, because the season has been so haphazard. So basically what I usually do is I do a huge preview special live, like the night before, like a Wednesday night. You know, most of the games start that weekend, and the Thursday we'll have 4 or 5 nice matchups, and I'll deliver a big preview special on the Wednesday night. But with everybody starting at different weeks, I've kind of unveiled, even though I made my college football playoff selections before anybody played: Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, Texas. Yes, Texas. I picked Texas. I did not predict the conference races until right before the season started, and I failed to do that with the Pac-12. So I'm going to have to get on that tonight. So that's a viable pick right there. I do like Arizona State. That's the game of the year in the Pac-12 South coming up just tomorrow. Game 1 is going to be the game, I believe. Arizona State taking on USC at the Coliseum. I am surprised that the Trojans are a 10.5 to 11-point favorite. I think that is too much. Maybe I'm going to open up an account tonight, because I haven't laid $1 on a game this year, as I typically do. I just have let it pass me by and haven't been interested in putting any money on games. But maybe I will on that one, because I really like the points in Arizona State. Ant E joins us on Patreon. He's a member of our Voice of College Football community there. Good evening. to you as well. How big is the number one playoff spot this year? Well, last year we know it was huge. There were 3 excellent teams that were a cut or 2 or 3 or 10 above everybody else. I believe that Alabama was the 4th best team in the country, even with Mac Jones and not Tua. And now we're seeing what Mac Jones can do. So I made this statement over and over and over and over after the conference championship games, once the playoff selections were made, and even prior to, I said, Oklahoma is earning this college football playoff spot as a one-loss conference champion. For the first time in the history of the college football playoff, which is all of 6 years old, the first 5 times I had issues with the selections and the approach. This time, it was clear cut. Oregon had lost that second game. There was no second place team in any of the conferences that had a viable argument. So it was clear cut, but there was also a clear cut distinction between LSU, Clemson, and Ohio State and everybody else. And so I made the distinction between the committee tells us at times that they're selecting the 4 best teams, and other times they're looking at a criteria which includes wins and losses, conference championship, schedule strength, quality wins, bad losses. And I understand either approach, but they swing back and forth depending on the situation. They pretty much select whom they want, and then they justify it either by saying, well, we can go by the resume of the one-loss record, the conference championship, the quality wins of top 25 or top 15 caliber, the lack of a bad loss, a justifiable loss, or when they can't justify the selection based on real data and criteria and talking points, they just swing to, we select the 4 best teams. Last year, they could have selected the 4 best teams. Now, it would have created all sorts of controversy, and I would have been on a tirade and gone crazy and said, what's going on? This makes no sense. Why do you play the games? Why do you have conferences? Had they said, sure, Oklahoma's 12-1, won the Big 12, but Alabama's better, even at 11-2 or 10-2 at that point, 10-2 without a conference championship or division championship. So I said, I agree with the selection, and it's an obvious selection. You have to take Oklahoma as a conference champion with 1 loss. But the 4th best team in the country is not Oklahoma, it's Alabama. And I don't think there's any question anyone in the world, even the biggest Oklahoma fan on the planet, could argue that Alabama was not going to be losing to LSU at halftime by 35 points. Okay, so that's what Aunt E is alluding to from last season. So does that apply this season? It appears as though it does. It still replace Alabama for LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, I believe, are the 3 best teams in the country. I believed that to begin the season before I saw anybody play, and nothing's been done and nothing's been displayed on the field that would change my mind. So now we've got to drop off to 4th, and whether that's a Pac-12 champion, Oregon, USC, Arizona State, whether that's a Big 12 champion, Oklahoma State most likely, shoot, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas State, Iowa State, West Virginia, they all have a shot, but they're going to have 2 losses unless it's Oklahoma State. Cincinnati, a Notre Dame, if they don't lose big, let's say Notre Dame beats Clemson tomorrow night, then they fall in the ACC championship game. What if Texas A&M finishes 9-1 and do not get a chance to play in the conference championship, but they're 9-1? What if Florida wins out and beats Alabama in the SEC championship game, or Georgia, and Alabama's been the dominant team in the country with Clemson and Ohio State, but they're a dominant team, but they lose the conference championship game? So, yes, the drop-off from Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State to the next team, unless I see something dramatically different in the next 5 to 6 weeks, is decided. Think about the talent and the performance of those 3 teams, and then think about fill in your 4th spot with Georgia. They played Alabama well, led them 24-17, played well into the 4th quarter, eventually collapsed under the poor quarterbacking of Stetson Bennett by 17 points. Texas A&M lost to Alabama by 4 touchdowns. Notre Dame is not, unless I see something drastically different tomorrow night, and it's going to be disclaimed by Trevor Lawrence not being there and 3 Clemson defensive starters out for the game. It's can't think of his first name. Davis, the defensive tackle. Mike Jones, the outside linebacker, and James Skowski, the best defensive player they have, and certainly the leader of the defense. Yes, we are going to see a drop-off at number 4. Therefore, it's important to grab that number 1 slot and only have to play one killer game, one brutal, back and forth, emotional, physically draining game that can beat up a team like Ohio State and Clemson played last year that LSU did not play last year. All right, got CU Tigers. Oh, we got CU Tigers. My bad. There you go. We got a Clemson fan. I got Florida over Georgia if they go with Bennett. So we had some great discussions about this on my channel. So check out the videos tonight. Give those videos a look. We had David Waters from Gators Breakdown on. We had Palmer Toms from Dogs 247 Sports and my analysis. So this is my thought. DeJuan Mathis won the job. Got the start against Arkansas. Looked pretty bad for 2 quarters. But didn't get much of a chance. Kirby Smart panicked. Down 7-2 in the second quarter. He panicked in the opener. DeJuan Mathis looked a little lost. He threw a pick, but it wasn't the end of the world. He might have wanted to stay with DeJuan Mathis a little longer. Okay. Stetson Bennett comes in. Georgia scores a ton of points. They win by 27. He plays well as a game manager against Arkansas, Auburn, Tennessee, with much better personnel on his side. Guys to hand the ball off to, namely Zamir White, James Cook, and others, and just a tremendous defense. Arguably the best defense in the country. So Stetson Bennett could be the game manager against middle-tier SEC competition, and Georgia would just bully them, beat them up on defense, and their superior offensive line and athletes at running back in particular would win the game. All right, then came Alabama. It was a great game for a half. It was still a great game into the 4th quarter until Alabama got that TD to make it 34-24, and Stetson Bennett continually making bad decisions, putting his defense in a bad place, wore down the defense. They finally caved in, gave up big plays, and they lose by 17. But it was a close game up until about 8 to 10 minutes left. Kirby Smart missed his opportunity on Saturday against Kentucky, in which his defense dominated the game. Unlike anything that you see in modern college football, you don't see teams going out against good, capable teams. I'm not talking about going out against UTEP. Going out against Kentucky, regardless of what their record finishes at this year, Kentucky has quality talent and win the game 14-3. Give up 3 points in a college football game in this day and age to an SEC team. That was Kirby Smart's opportunity to play quarterbacks, to audition the quarterbacks for the Florida game. Do one of 2 things, Kirby, in this game against Kentucky. Either audition the quarterbacks, meaning play Mathis, Beck, Daniels, Bennett, or whomever you believe based on what you've seen in practice is up for the job. Either do that, make it an audition for the Florida game, or say, I still believe in Stetson Bennett. He's been the best quarterback in practice. I believe he's the best quarterback, and I would question that, but still, if that's the determination. But don't throw 13 passes. Throw the ball. Let him work in a live situation against a quality defense. Let him work it out. Don't hand the ball off 50 times, throw it 13, and expect to be prepared for Florida. You're going to have to throw the ball against Florida to a certain extent. Not 13 times, not 18 times, not 22 times, probably a little bit more than that. They don't want to throw it 50 times. That's not their game. But they're going to have to throw the ball some. And that was the perfect opportunity to work on the passing game. Didn't make sense. Indy Kid 3 says, Georgia benches Stetson for DeJuan Mathis or JT Daniels. CC Boy, the Florida-Georgia game is going to be decided by Bennett. I believe I have unfortunately lost my place in the live stream. There we go. Let's see what else we've got. What happened to Jamie Newman? He decided to opt out and prepare himself for the NFL draft, which I think he is poorly prepared for based on his college experience. Jamie Newman did not get a chance to start until Sam Hartman was injured. Or was that still... yeah, that would have been Sam Hartman, because John Wofford was the quarterback who threw more than 30 touchdowns a year before. So Newman didn't get his big chance until there was an injury near the end of 2018. And Jamie Newman came in, and one of his first games, almost his first significant, meaningful action, he came in on a Thursday night against NC State, an NC State team that was ranked in the top 15, was not a top 15 team. But anyway, they were good. Top 15 team in the country, and Newman outdueled Ryan Finley and led a comeback for a touchdown in the win, the upset win at NC State. And then Jamie Newman proceeded to win 3 games like that. The Memphis Bowl game, they scored with about 30 seconds left to win. He led a game-winning drive. It was very impressive. I rewatched that drive. I rewatched another game in which he pulled it out at the end. So he had a clutch end of 2018 with little experience. Then in 2019, the overall stats looked good for Jamie Newman. But if you dissect and really break it down against the quality competition, the quality defenses like Clemson, of course, which that can be an aberration because your entire team is so overmatched. It's not fair to judge and evaluate the quarterback's numbers with inferior offensive line play against a great defensive line and so forth and so on. But even against the likes of Michigan State and others, Jamie Newman did not play that well against good competition in 2019. So anyway, he has decided to prepare for the NFL draft. There it is. He opted out. Nicholas, I apologize for the super chat not being on, but I do so much appreciate your inquiry there. So this particular show is on SD1 College Football. I can't control anything in regards to that, so I don't know what I would need to flip, but I can't control anything since this is on the SD1 College Football channel. But I do appreciate the inquiry. Many of you do know my situation, that basically this has been my passion, been my desire. This has been my mission for a number of years, is to provide college football content for all of you. I've got a broadcasting background that I will not go into and bore all of you, but it's pretty substantial. But decided to resign from ESPN after 19 years there last month. And I'm doing this full-time, full throttle all the time, and certainly need to generate revenue in a hurry. So, Nicholas, I appreciate your efforts there. See you, Tigers. If Georgia designs an offense JT can run, they will win. Well, we know Georgia's going to win. They could put me at quarterback, and they're going to win to a certain extent. It's about winning these enormous games. Carl, Michigan's the worst. Michigan sucks. Carl, oh, Michigan will make the playoffs. Michigan fans. We've got a Notre Dame fan in who is Notre Dame fan. Likes his team 27-24. So I'm rooting for Notre Dame. That has nothing to do with me liking Notre Dame. It has nothing to do with me disliking Clemson. The reason I'm rooting for Notre Dame is I want to see some drama, some intrigue, some interest. I want to gain some interest in the ACC. The ACC was owned by Florida State from going back to 2010, 2011, in that range. Certainly 2012, they won the ACC with E.J. Manuel at quarterback. Dominated in 2013, 14, and then you saw that transition of power. And Clemson, of course, won the matchup for the first time in 2015 after they had been beaten down in what was the ACC Game of the Year for the two previous seasons. Clemson broke through in 2015, but Florida State was still right there. They still went to the Peach Bowl in 2015, still were the second best team in the conference. 2016, still the second best team in the conference, played Clemson really close, won the Orange Bowl, finished in the top 10. Even in 2017, Jimbo's last year when Florida State dipped to 7-6, they still gave Clemson fits. Still played Clemson well in 2017. And basically the ACC's demise, I will blame on Florida State, because once they went off the cliff, the ACC has not been the same. And it's been Clemson and nobody else, and nobody challenges them. They get their one scary year, which twice resulted in losses, where Pitt in 2016 and, of course, Syracuse in 2017 actually in upset fashion won the games. The other ones were just scares. Syracuse in 2018, of course, North Carolina last year on the 2-point conversion, 21-20, and then this year it was Boston College. So I guess that's the one we will see this year, Boston College, in leading 28-10. But other than that, Clemson dominates, and it's not even close. There is such a disparity between them and the rest of the league. Ohio State owns the Big Ten. Oklahoma has owned the Big 12, but there's still competition. There is still a second tier. Maybe not necessarily this year in the Big 10, but there has been Penn State and Michigan and Wisconsin, etc. Michigan State in the past. But Clemson, it is just not fun. It's not interesting. So I want to see Notre Dame win this game just to push Clemson a little bit and say, okay, well, they can't lose another game. So they're going to have to rally, win out, win the rematch, just to make it interesting. Notre Dame fans got his predictions on Ohio State and Michigan. They will play 9 games, with the 9th game the championship weekend. My preseason prediction was Ohio State 9-0, Michigan 6-3, 6-3, 5-4, 6-3. I'd have to go back and look for sure. Notre Dame fan likes Notre Dame to win the Natty over Bama. Notre Dame fan, I'm an Ohio State fan. So I will say this. And I think people can back me up on this. People watch my channel for months, sometimes years, and they don't know who I root for. So what we deliver on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, is, first of all, my analysis. Love to talk to all of you. As you can tell from this live stream in particular, I go through and I respond to any viable, any reasonable comments that are made. And so I love the debate. I love the discussion. I bring on bloggers and broadcasters and writers from all over the country, SB Nation, Bleacher Report, all sorts of different sites, bring them on to talk college football. And then, of course, give the analysis myself. Just to give you a kind of a slice of what I get into, I was working on some Texas information the other day because I was thinking they are the poster child of underachievement, of being overrated and underachieving in the last decade, Texas football. And so I looked up, I went through the records of Charlie Strong and now Tom Herman, of course, the recruiting classes and how they related to the records. the 5 stars signed, and what they've done on the field and so forth and so on. So that is kind of the stuff that we deliver at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. A lot of ratings, a lot of rankings, a lot of historical perspective on things. We looked at Jim Harbaugh's tenure the other day. And so I love when people don't know who I root for and they've been watching me, and then it drives them crazy, and they finally ask me and they say, Mark, I've been watching for 2 years. I don't even know who you root for. And number two, Ohio State fans not knowing who I root for. I grew up in Ohio. Ohio State fans getting on me for being too hard on Ohio State and being an Ohio State hater. I had like 4 people a couple of weeks ago. I don't know what I said. There must have been something in particular that they didn't like about my criticism of Ohio State football for whatever reason, that they jumped on me and said, yeah, you're a Buckeye hater. So I find that to be a badge of honor. Hey, Luke, it's great to see you. So please lock it in here at SD1 College Football. Chris provides great content here each and every day. And join me at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Just type in either Mark Rogers TV or the voice of college football in your YouTube search, and you're going to find so much content over there, you're going to get lost. We get to live streams every day, call-in shows. We go full throttle. Nicholas, big Michigan State fan. I thought it was 4th down. Why is Minnesota, Penn State, and Baylor struggling? Well, Minnesota lost most of its playmakers on defense. They lost their top tackler. They lost Antoine Winfield, who's just tearing it up for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now. Minnesota, it's basically a defensive issue, because if you look at the offense, Tanner Morgan, with all the attention going to Lawrence and Fields and Burrow, turned in an exceptional 30 touchdowns and 7 picks, one of the more efficient seasons in college football. Muhammad Ibrahim was a 1,000-yard rusher 2 years ago. He's back. All 5 starting offensive linemen back. They did lose their depth in the O-line, but they brought back all 5 offensive line starters. They did lose one of the best receivers in college football, Tyler Johnson, but they did bring back Rashad Bateman and Chris Ottman-Bell at wide receiver. They lost 2 old-timers at running back. These guys were on campus since like 2013. And I'm only slightly exaggerating. I would think maybe 2014. Shannon Brooks and Rodney Smith. They both left, but they were serviceable running backs, good college running backs, but not missing anything there. So the offense is basically returned. The defense was shredded. I watched every play against Maryland and Michigan, so I've seen 2 full games of Minnesota football, and the defense is deplorable. So that's why they're struggling. We knew that they were going to take a downgrade in defense, but to go from a top 25 defense in the country, and I don't know where they ranked statistically, but they were legitimately a top 25 defense in college football, to, I don't know what they're going to be ranked this year, but it's awful through 2 games. Maryland scored 3 at Northwestern and then torched them for 675 yards. Okay, Penn State. There is not a team in college football that is more different after 1 or 2 games, and even from the time they stepped on the field this year, than what we expected them to be in the preseason. There was talk about Penn State, much like there's annually talk about Georgia, as being that second place team that's going to lose to an elite, but still be a college football playoff contender. People estimated that Penn State would go 8-1, lose to Ohio State in a competitive game, and be in position to be selected for the college football playoff. I was not one of those people. I saw a race in the Big Ten of Ohio State 9-0, and I had a glut of 6-3 teams. I didn't see a clear number 2 this year. But Penn State lost its best defensive player, and maybe the best defensive player in the conference, Micah Parsons. They lost Journey Brown before the season started. There's a possibility that he'll be back, but I think the more they lose and since we've got a shortened season anyway, but he had a medical situation outside of COVID. And so Journey Brown was lost for the season. And if you're familiar with Penn State football, he tore it up and became the guy down the stretch last year for Penn State, culminating with 200 plus yards rushing in the Cotton Bowl. So they lost their best defensive player, arguably their best offensive player. And Sean Clifford has never produced well against good defenses. His numbers overall last year, 23 touchdowns, 7 picks, 59% completion percentage, were good, but did not play well against Ohio State, Iowa, Minnesota in particular. Penn State also lost their inspirational leader on defense, at least for the first half, against Ohio State, Jesse Luketa. And they were never in a good place at wide receiver. Jahan Dotson made some exceptional catches against Ohio State, but he's inconsistent. And when your tight end is your best player on offense, you're in trouble. Penn State has top 10 talent, but it's uneven. It's not making the impact that they needed to. And again, they lost arguably their best offensive player and definitely their best defensive player. Baylor, I have not seen Baylor play this year. But consider they've got a new coach in Dave Aranda and that he's a first-time head coach. That means something. Also understand that Matt Rule did an amazing job there, just like he did at Temple. Also consider that 11-1 was a bit of a fluke at Baylor. And they were my number one selection for having the biggest decline in losses this year. There wasn't any way that they were going to keep up that pace, that regular season record of 11-1. So the Baylor drop-off is not surprising. The Minnesota drop-off, to a certain extent, is surprising to this degree, for as bad as they've looked in 2 games. You know, Minnesota went 11-2 last year, 10-2 in the regular season, and I saw a drop-off to 8-4. Of course, they're not playing that many games, but I saw an 8-4 kind of Minnesota team this year. But they look like a 4-8 team. They're playing like a 4-8 team. All right. Luke's an Alabama fan, liking how the team looks, but am worrying too much that LSU could be overlooked and upset us. Well, upsets do happen, and that seems ludicrous and ridiculous. But Luke, I think your point is well taken, because LSU, from a talent perspective, is capable. The team is dysfunctional right now. They're lost. The performance at Auburn is just baffling. They played 2 freshman quarterbacks, and Max Johnson and can't think of the kid's first name, Finley. Got a Finley at NC State, got a Finley at LSU, and replacing Miles Brennan. But after they took a punch in the mouth out of the gate against Mississippi State, dropped the second game against Missouri, I thought, okay, this could really come off the rails. Once they righted themselves against a South Carolina team at home and won in blowout fashion, scored 52 points against the South Carolina team that had just beaten Auburn, I thought, okay, they just beat a team that's got to be feeling good about themselves and has some incentive to play. And they were a 7-point favorite. And a lot of people, that was their upset of the week, South Carolina beating LSU. And they won that game convincingly. And I thought, okay, they've probably reset themselves to say, okay, we're not winning a national championship, an SEC championship. We're not going to have that kind of season, but we still have goals. We can finish this out, take some pride in the season. And it looked like they had righted the ship, at least to that degree. And I expected them to go to Auburn and that to be a razor close game. And they just fell apart. So I understand your concern there, but I just think LSU is just way too dysfunctional. And there's one thing to have talent. It's another thing to be playing together. And it's just not in any way close to working there. So Alabama, and also understand that this isn't just another team for Alabama. This isn't, let's say if inexplicably, Missouri won the national championship the year before, and they just happened to play Alabama the next year, and they're back to being Missouri, and Alabama's going to play them. LSU is Alabama's chief rival with Auburn in a different sense. They've been the team that has been most capable of taking down Alabama since Nick Saban. LSU posted a historic season last year. They beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. They went 15-0. They won the SEC. Alabama considers all of these accomplishments to be rites of passage. Alabama owns the SEC. Alabama should be playing in the national championship game. Alabama should be 15-0. So they're going to look to kick LSU while they're down, because LSU took all of that away from Alabama last year. Notre Dame fan likes Kyron Williams for 150 yards. Kyron Williams isn't rushing for 150 yards against the likes of Louisville and Duke, so I don't know about that. LSU appears to be a dumpster fire, yes. So would you take back-to-back 10-2 seasons and decent bowl appearances, Sugar Bowl, whether that be a New Year's Six or whatever bowl appearance, so 10-2, 10-2, would you take those years back-to-back, or would you take a historic run to win a national championship and then a 4-8 kind of season? I think most fans would take the national championship in the bad season. Carl's back. Just wanted to let everybody know that. I thought it was fourth down. What's the most surprising team in NCAA football? Most surprising to me, Rutgers would be on that list. Because think about Rutgers. Rutgers had not just lost 21 consecutive Big Ten games. They were embarrassed almost all of those games. Consider the magnitude of those losses. Rutgers was losing those games 50-0, basically, across the board. They're losing by 40 and 50 points all of those games. They are not competitive. They start the season, they go to Michigan State. We know Michigan State's projected to be down, a new head coach, not the talent that they've had in the past. It's not the same Michigan State program it was 5 years ago, but still it's a Big Ten opponent on the road, and Rutgers wins. Then they win their first game in 22 games in the Big Ten. Then they come home to take on a red-hot Indiana team that maybe kind of lucked into a win, but still had a monumental, historical win. And no, Rutgers didn't take them to the wire. They certainly didn't win the game, but they were, considering where Rutgers football has been the past 3 to 4 years, and pretty much ever since they joined the Big Ten, they were competitive against a team that's a legitimate fringe top 25 team. I don't care where Indiana's ranked right now. They're a fringe top 25 team. And Rutgers was competitive. To me, that's the most surprising off the top of my head. Anybody else? I'm not overly surprised by anyone. I know Penn State's 0-2, but they lost to maybe the best team in college football last weekend. And again, you heard my analysis before. They're not the same team. They're beat up. They're missing their best players. And the Indiana game was a bit of a fluke. They blew it. So those are the surprise. That is the surprising team for me, would be Rutgers. Yeah, LSU being this bad is a surprise to me. I thought that I picked them to go, I believe, 7-3. So it's a surprise to me that LSU is quite this bad. It's surprising to me that Mike Leach, his offense is this awful. So just a handful of weeks, 4 or 5 weeks after torching the defending national champions in Death Valley for 623 yards, an SEC record. Think about this. Mike Leach's offense got shut out by Kentucky, got shut out by Alabama, scored one meaningless touchdown in garbage time against Texas A&M, lost to Arkansas that had lost 20 consecutive SEC games. And during that time, Mike Leach's offense produced I did the numbers the other day. 21 points in 4 games. 21 points, and one of those meaningless, but 21 points in 4 games. 5 points per game. 5 points in this day and age of college football. Mike Leach's offense has produced 5 points per game over the last 4 games through 2 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. That's been surprising. All right, everyone. Again, I appreciate everybody jumping on here, and keep it locked in here at SD1 College Football. And of course, join me at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Just look this up on right here on YouTube. You can just search it right there. Either term, I believe, you'll find me, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We preview the games, predict the games, bring on the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers. We do analysis and debate and discussion constantly, rate and rank things. And again, it's a great time. We do call-in shows all week and invite you to join us right there. I am off to do a watch party on Patreon with our Patreon community, so you can join us there as well. It's a great time with an insider look at our operation, also predictions, also betting advice and tips from Steve Merrill of Pro Sports Info, his lock of the week. And we have watch parties, and we also do exclusive live streams where you can come on and talk to me and other college football fans directly. So please check me out on Patreon. Just search Mark Rogers TV. Go to Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV, find us there. Also, after the Miami, North Carolina State game tonight, I will be live on my Miami channel. So search the voice of college football, Miami. You'll find us there. We've got a live call-in show after the Miami, North Carolina State game tonight. And there's also a big one, of course, in the Mountain West with Boise State taking on, I should say, the group of 5, with the Broncos taking on the Cougars of BYU. But again, after the game tonight on the Miami channel, Mark Rogers TV Miami, Voice of College Football Miami, Voice of College Football Miami, find us there, and we'll have a good time in the live chat as well there. All right, everyone, we appreciate it. Again, it's every Sunday, it's every Friday here at 6 o'clock Eastern Time on SD1 College Football. We will see you soon.